Hi guys, welcome to Origins. So, I want to talk in this video about feminism and Islam, specifically because these are the two topics that have dominated the discussion on YouTube for the last few years. I've made many videos about them myself, kind of reluctantly, because of the way people generally talk about them. And the reason for this is you have, on both of these issues, two groups that are very divided. They don't tend to consider each other's opinions. They've loaded up in advance on all of the stock arguments. They hurl them at each other, and they don't even treat individuals on the opposing side as individuals. They treat them as stereotypes, as people who hold a stereotypical view of that side. So say you're an anti-feminist or an MRA or whatever you want to call them, and you're watching a video by a feminist. Some of these people would criticize that feminist based on something they said by saying, that they also hold this particular stereotypical feminist belief. As an example, TLDR made a video to Lacey saying, it was Lacey's video saying she's a feminist, and she said, when she talks about consent, there are people in her audience that laugh. And TLDR said, when you ask people to sign consent forms before having sex, then obviously, that's something that is worthy of laughing at. But she's never actually said that. That's just, there are some feminists that have said that, but she hasn't. But because those feminists have said it, that's somehow been associated with her, and it's unbelievable some of the things you hear. I'd like to say this is an isolated case, but it's just not. There's so many, and it points to a bigger problem here, and that's that we're not seeing, whichever side we're putting ourselves in, we're not seeing the other side as, someone who holds a different opinions, but who we're open to debating with. No, it's just, they're an enemy to be destroyed. And, that's not the way that I argue on my channel. I don't advocate it, and I really hope that the people watching don't agree with it either. It's ridiculous. What I try to do is I try to understand the other person, what they're saying, but also what's kind of led them to believe that. What are their experiences, even if they're probably quite traumatic, that have led them to, come to that conclusion. And specifically when it comes to feminism, I think that there are some arguments made where the opposing argument doesn't even conflict. I'm thinking specifically here of rape. In cases of rape, the feminists would say, well, you can't blame the victim, you can't slut shame, you can't do anything like that. And then the anti-feminists say stuff like, oh, but, the choice of dress or the level of drunkenness of the victim isn't completely irrelevant. You need to take that into consideration because the rapist is looking for the most vulnerable target. And feminists take issue with that because, because it detracts, it encourages the idea of victim blaming by not focusing on the victim blaming, by focusing on the, what the victim's wearing and, how drunk they were and stuff like that. And the anti-feminists don't like, the feminists focusing on victim blaming because, as they see it, the feminists are being irresponsible. They're telling people they can wear whatever they want and, get as blind drunk as they like and not expect to face any consequences. But I think the negatives on both sides there aren't true. I think if you put both of those arguments together, they don't conflict. They're just two perspectives on the same issue. If you were to say, you shouldn't victim blame, well, you shouldn't blame the victim, but at the same time, you can't completely, encourage some level of responsibility for what you wear. Consider that these things have an impact, that they affect how a potential rapist might act. Then, you don't. It's not something that people need to get too emotional about. They just need to consider the fact that it has, you take these as two sides of the same coin. And, I think everyone pretty much understands that, people are more vulnerable if they're blind drunk or, in high heels or something like that. It's kind of patronising to point it out. That might be another criticism that feminists have for people who say things like that. But, put these two sides together. As I said, they don't conflict. Now, if you take that perspective, if you take that attitude towards everything, then I think we have a better discussion here. So my advice to people watching, and that's, especially if you're new to the conversation, but especially if you're entrenched in one particular viewpoint, focus on being as objective as you possibly can. If you have an emotional attachment or an emotional revulsion for the other side, consciously try to eliminate that. Try to distance yourself and, consider where the other person is coming from. Consider their background. Consider, try to put themselves in their shoes. Because at the moment, the discussion isn't beneficial. It's just, it's cringeworthy. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. But please, let's have a better discussion. We always say that we're, when we talked about atheism in the past, we're open to the opposing side's arguments. I don't see that with feminism or Islam. Let's be adult about this. Let's have a better discussion, please. I'm fed up of watching these ridiculous videos and reading all of this crap, and we can do better. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.